What's going on, everyone? It's your boy Savvy, and welcome back to the Savvy Show. And in today's episode, there's no other way to say it, we got a juicy one on our hands, guys. This one is special because it has something that I didn't even think there will be a correlation with. We already knew SCP-682, he's everywhere and nowhere at the same time. Somehow he's just related to almost every single SCP, but with SCP-5000, that's a different situation because it's more so like a tale. And one of my favorite tales by far, top 3, at least in my own opinion, of tales that I covered on the channel as of late. But I want to see how this is going to pan out because this is going to be about how SCP-682 tried to stop SCP-5000. Guys, I'm ready to dive deep, man. If you guys are excited for this reaction and you do enjoy it along the way, please remember to smash that like button for me. Let's get 100 likes on this one. I have no doubt this is going to be a banger, so let's get it popping. And also remember, smash the sub button and hit that bell so you stay plugged for each and every upload. That's one of the most important steps so you can get notified when I drop some heat. So with that all out the way, without any further ado, let's get this show started. Alrighty, how SCP-682 tried to stop SCP-5000. Let's get it.
You all remember this story. One of the most epic, sprawling, action-packed tales in the entire multiverse. The saga of Pietro Wilson and the SCP-5000 exclusion suit.
Went through so much.
He went through an unimaginable hell to reset the universe and save the world from an SCP Foundation that had seemingly lost its mind. And an unprecedented international mass containment breach that had a stated goal of wiping out the human race.
Sheesh.
It was one of the most horrifying possible timelines imaginable. And we should all be thankful for Pietro's struggle and sacrifice.
Yes, sir.
Or should we? After all, there are two sides to every story, each with its own perspective and insight. One side of the coin was Pietro, a man willing to do anything to return normalcy to the human race. On the other side was a familiar yet wholly unexpected face, SCP-682. In our original telling of the SCP-5000 Odyssey, you may have noticed passing mentions of SCP-682 here and there. It was one of those thousands of anomalies unleashed across the world to wreak terrible havoc on all of us. But what you may not have known is that SCP-682 was one of the few intelligent entities that weren't surprised by the sudden turn taken by the SCP Foundation, or indeed the world at large. SCP-682 knew something like this was inevitable, as soon as human beings found out about it. That's right, it. The entity behind all the pain and misery of SCP-5000. And today, thanks to the inner thoughts of none other than SCP-682 itself, you will understand what it's all about.
That's it.
And why the SCP Foundation took such severe action against it. But in order to truly understand this, and the role that SCP-682 plays in it, we need to get back to the beginning. Two Foundation projects with wildly different research implications. Project Pneuma and Project Damarang.
I haven't heard of Project Pneuma, but I heard of Project Damarang. That was about the other SCP, which was called, I think, After Death or Life After Death. It was one of a non-animation reaction I covered on the channel. That one was pretty badass too. You guys should check it out. But yeah, let's see what this is all about.
First involved using cutting-edge technological advancements to map out the human psychosphere and understand the psychic web that connects us all. The latter was an attempt to explore what happens after death, and perhaps even gain some control over its processes. But as is often the case when mankind dabbles in arcane questions better left unexplored, the SCP Foundation didn't like the answers they found. The rotten fruit of Project Damarang was SCP-2718. Also known as What Happens After Death. If you're already familiar with this one, then there's a good chance a chill just went down your spine.
Oh my god, that was such a good one too. You guys actually have to check it out. I'm sorry. I want to plug it somewhere so you guys can peep it out. Shameless plug, but that one is a banger, guys. I'm telling you. If you want juicy, tap into that one after this.
It's widely considered one of the most disturbing anomalous discoveries ever. And a member of the O5 Council who'd already experienced it decided to submit himself for eternal torture at the hands of SCP-106.
Crazy.
Just so he could avoid it. According to SCP-2718, after death there is no heaven, no hell, and no oblivion. The human consciousness endures in the most horrifying way possible. It remains bonded to its decaying earthly body,
oh my god,
feeling the slow agony of rot for eternity.
That sucks.
Unable to speak, unable to move. unable to scream but fully aware as everything they once were putrefies and withers away. And cremation isn't an escape here, it's worse. Every molecule of ash your body is reduced to will cry out in silence, echoing around the empty halls of your fragmented soul forever. With something this utterly horrifying, the natural follow-up questions are, why does this happen? And for the love of all that is good and pure on this earth, is there any way to stop it? This brings us to Project Pneuma, the one that's even more closely associated with the events of SCP-5000. The Foundation's attempts to map out the human psychosphere resulted in a world-shattering discovery. Something was living in there. The entity. The powerful, nameless creature we've been referring to as It. It lives in so many of our heads, watching, waiting, and of course, feeding. The main question here is, on what? Prior to the discovery that changed everything in the world of SCP-5000, the only being that truly knew was SCP-682 itself, melting away in its acid tank, bound by reinforced restraints, hurting, bored, hating. Imagine for a second what the life of SCP-682 is like. It isn't the most dangerous of the anomalies out there. There are Devourer of Worlds, and Scarlet Kings more happy to crush our whole world in their claws. Nor is it the most sadistic.
Why did you say Scarlet Kings as in plural? Like there's multiple Scarlet Kings. What are you talking about? There's only one Scarlet King. I mean, there's other gods that have similar powers and stronger than the Scarlet King, obviously. Higher level entities, but there's one Scarlet King. To my knowledge, I could be wrong. Let me know in the comment section below.
Being like SCP-106 offers a far more painful death than being quickly mauled, crushed, or eaten by the hard-to-destroy reptile. And despite this, the Foundation expends countless resources in trying to murder it on a constant basis. It has been burnt, melted, eaten alive, drowned, slashed, beaten, dissected, suffocated, erased from existence, set upon by nightmare creatures, torn to shreds on an atomic level, and even more terrible termination attempts than you can possibly imagine. We've made several videos on the subject, and even we have barely scratched the surface of the pain inflicted on SCP-682 by the SCP Foundation.
Several is an understatement. They made a lot of videos about this dude. I mean, they're milking this guy. But hey, I can understand. It's an interesting SCP, and it's a fan favorite. But god damn, this SCP be doing the most sometimes with his regenerative abilities. But there's a reason behind that. If you guys haven't seen those, I don't want to spoil it, but yeah.
Even in its default state, SCP-682 is constantly submerged in hydrofluoric acid, eating away at it forever. Does that remind you of anything else we've been talking about?
SCP-2718.
You might wonder how SCP-682 can withstand this level of constant torture without completely losing its mind. To put it very simply, 682 takes a great deal of satisfaction in knowing that what every human has to contend with after death is far worse than the tortures it expected to endure at the pathetic hands of these doomed human fools. It already knew what Project Pneuma discovered. It already knew about it, the entity. It felt the constant suffering of the teeming billions of dead in the world around it, and it found it disgusting. An interesting choice of words, and a favorite for SCP-682, but also for the captured SCP Foundation agent Samuel Ross during SCP-5000. As we discussed briefly in our SCP-5000 coverage, something happened that aligned the perspectives of the SCP Foundation with that of the monstrous reptile that they had taken such pleasure in tormenting. What on earth could cause the protectors of humanity to suddenly change their tune like this? There are other little clues embedded in Pietro's terrifying SCP-5000 experience. You may remember a strange and frightening scene where a Foundation field commander went down a row of Foundation soldiers, stabbing each of them with a large combat knife, and none of them reacted. Until one did, at which point his comrades set upon him like mad dogs and killed him, displaying an uncharacteristic level of swift brutality. And then there are the classified files from the O5 Council and the Ethics Committee, led by Chairman Odongo Tejani. It goes without saying that the O5 Council and the Ethics Committee don't really see eye to eye on anything, but the results of Project Pneuma change that. The following is classified conversation between a member of the O5 Council, namely O5-1, and Chairman Tejani, trying to comprehend the horror of their discovery. My hands shake as I hold the document. This is confirmed? He nods. We got the report from Pneuma's staff yesterday. It's everyone. Even us? Even us, Tejani. To think I'd find myself agreeing with that damn lizard. What do we do? You know what we have to do. We'll have to disseminate a cure, I think, among personnel before we get things underway.
A cure?
They'll try to stop us otherwise. God help us, one. Don't be like that, Tijani. That's it talking. And one more incredibly telling quote from a member of the SCP Foundation picked up by Pietro Wilson during SCP-5000. Once you realize you're not supposed to feel pain, there's nothing to be afraid of anymore. Is it all coming together now? While each participant here only has a part of the puzzle between us all, we can see the full picture. The entity It has inhabited the human psychosphere for as long as we've existed. It's a kind of metaphysical parasite, attached to the entire human race. And what it feeds on seems to be the after effects of pain. And like all efficient parasites, like a tapeworm that induces hunger in its victim so that it can have more food delivered unto itself, the entity cleverly perpetuates its own food source. That's right. It is the very cause of all pain.
Wow.
Humanity was never actually meant to feel it. It's a lie we've told ourselves.
So this parasite is making us feel pain. That's what's causing it? At least in this, canon. Well, there's no canon, but you guys know what I mean. At least in this story and tale. Wow, that's crazy.
Well, not quite something we told ourselves, but something it told us. It induced pain and tricked us all into believing that it was a natural component of our existence. All the while, it fed on us, sustained itself on the suffering that it had seeded within our hearts and souls.
Is this like
the
a kind of
Foundation
god?
discovered this and was horrified. But of course, the pain it caused for the living was only part of the equation. Through the revelations of Project Damarang, another thing that SCP-682 was able to know intuitively, we can complete this puzzle and find the terrible truth. The truth being that it is not only behind the suffering we experience in life, but SCP-2718, the even greater suffering we experience in death.
He's probably having a buffet when people actually die. Oh my god. This is like constant pain. Constant. Not just like living through life and stubbing your toe. That one little source of pain. Like, when you're dead, you're dead. And when you end up being like SCP-2718, you got pain 24/7. This guy had a whole game plan set up.
For millennia, it has groomed humanity into a perfect all-you-can-eat buffet of dismal pain and suffering.
What did I just say? Yo, that's hilarious.
And until recently, they'd been so blissfully ignorant of the horrible fate that awaited them on the other side. The Foundation saw only one solution to this problem, but it certainly wasn't a nice one. In order to save themselves and all of humanity from a truly wretched eternity, they'd need to distribute a cure among themselves. The mimetic key phrase, harden your hearts, and then go about exterminating every human being still infected by it. Only that would presumably purge the monster from the psychosphere forever, and grant humanity both painless lives and restful deaths. It was a horrible thing done for the best of reasons.
I got a question. Y'all think life wouldn't be as meaningful if we didn't have pain? Just, it might be off topic, but I always pondered that. Even with this situation, say that we can't feel pain at all. Would we still have a meaningful life compared to if we still felt pain? Because I feel like pain helps us grow as people. Like, it doesn't matter what kind of pain, mentally or physically. If you endure it, you end up being a stronger version of yourself if you end up going that route. So it's always an interesting question. I'd love to hear what you guys think in the comment section below about that, if you made it to this point.
The cured Foundation personnel started to notice the horrible background noise of suffering all around them. They now understood how the reptile felt. To call all of this disgusting would be a grave understatement. If anything could help them execute this plan of mass mercy killing, it would be SCP-682, a scaly survivor in disguise all along. SCP-682 was surprised to see the day arrive. Alarms went off across the containment site. His acid tank was drained, his restraints unlocked.
Let's see.
A group of unarmed, unprotected researchers entered the room. He saw into their eyes. They'd changed. They were free. And for the first time in decades, he was free too. They explained to him that they'd been acquainted with his old enemy, the entity It. They understood his malice, his disdain. For once they were suddenly joined in a shared goal. They needed to kill them all. They needed to purge the entity from the psychosphere forever. In the words of the Foundation researchers, they would need to exterminate everyone who was infected, and SCP-682 would need to help.
That's everyone in this world, so that's going to be a heavy burden to bear.
The hard-to-destroy reptile, relishing the opportunity, replied, "I will do my part."
I mean, he's all happy for that. He hates us. I'm talking about anyone else doing it.
And for a brief window of glorious time, it was free. With no threat of recapture, it rampaged through the world, gleefully slaughtering scores of people. It was in its element, taking part in the mass extermination of the infected. Every dead body added to the pile was another blow struck against it. Soon enough, the world would be disgusting no longer. But of course, that's not how this story ended. It had a trump card, Pietro Wilson. It guided him all the way, dragging him from nightmare to nightmare, until he was eventually able to reset the world and erase the discovery made by Project Pneuma. The slate was wiped fully clean, and because of it, we are forever ignorant of the terrible fate awaiting us all after death, and the monster lurking in our psychosphere that feeds off of every morsel of suffering. You can thank Pietro Wilson for that nasty little gift.
Wow.
Only one entity truly remembered what had happened. SCP-682, of course. They had their chance to save themselves.
That's
and
crazy.
they ruined it. So close, yet so far. From that day onward, SCP-682 found the Foundation not only disgusting, but disappointing.
That is wild, guys. This was a wild story.
Now go check out SCP-5000-Y.
Oh my god. Yeah, you guys both have to check those out too. I'll link my reaction somewhere in this video. But guys, this was actually cool. It actually went together because I was wondering how they're going to tie this all in one, cohesive story that doesn't seem like it's just out of nowhere. And man, it went well, like way better than I thought it would. And it makes sense why SCP-682 hates us. He hates humans. Like, at least in this tale, it shows that we are the ones affected by one of his enemies that he's been having for God knows how long. Bro, this put me in a good mood, man. If you guys enjoyed this reaction, please let me know by smashing that like button. Also, smash the sub button, join the family if not already part of it. And let's get like 100 likes on this one. And also remember, smash the noti bell so you don't miss an upload. Probably the most important step you could take if you guys haven't made it already. Make that leap and don't miss out on the upload, because it's only going to get hotter from here. So with that all out the way, unfortunately, that concludes today's episode. However, I'll catch you guys on the next one.